This is day number 5 of the August 91 7-day retreat at Springwater. There are not as many questions today. I didn't write down so many. Here they are. I am so competitive, I feel I need to excel everywhere, be as good or better than anyone else. And then there's a real sadness in seeing how this separates. What is this tremendous attachment to my story? I'm sick of it. And yet I don't know what to do about it. I don't know how to drop it. It seems I can't. I don't know what to do. It seems to me you are using the word awareness as though there was some state of awareness that was totally separate, unrelated to objects. But awareness is always of something, of an object, a subject that is aware of an object. I am aware of this. If there is no subject or object, then use a different word than awareness. Also, I don't agree that practice of concentration is not necessary to help. Is not necessary. Also, I don't agree that practice of concentration is not necessarily helpful in bringing about attention. In other words, it is helpful. I know this for myself, that it is, and you may be confusing people by the way you talk about all this, the words you use. You yourself have had concentration, practice, training, a long Zen practice, which must have had an influence. Also, the person was saying, do you realize the responsibility you have in talking to people who are just sitting here and can't say something? I'm taking this very seriously. I'm not. It's good when people bring challenges like this. Then one looks again at the whole thing. In saying one dies to what In saying one dies to the whole dream of what one calls one's life. In saying one dies to the whole dream of what one calls one's life. Does that mean that I must let go of what I love, that I must lose what I am attached to? There won't be enough time to maybe even go into one of these questions, and we will. You know which one we will take. The one on, is there a better way of using words? Or are the words that are being used confusing? And I'll say in all honesty, I feel very responsible for what I say. Sometimes I wake up and think, did I say something that isn't so? It's not an easy thing to talk, go out on a limb and say things. I understand what is involved, and I know it's not perfect. So, where shall we start? I have not been very thorough in defining the words that I'm using. That's true. And I do use, I'm aware of, or let's be, or become aware of something, or can one be aware of something, as though there was an object aware, a subject aware of an object. I use language this way. This is our common language, the way it comes out. And yet, in using the word awareness, I am referring to a state in which there is no subject with its prejudices, wishes, fears, but just see, we could say, are we aware of the crickets, or are they just the crickets? So we don't have to use the word awareness when there is just what is. Then there is no subject, there is no object, there is what is, but not this relationship of me to that. And maybe we should use another word than awareness. And in thinking about it, I realize that recently I've much more used the word openness than awareness. In this openness there is the crickets, the breath, the words, the heat, the cold. It's all there. No one aware of it, meaning not thinking about myself, aware of that. The moment I think, oh, I'm aware of this, then it's not that state that was just described. Then it's thought coming in, and maybe we could use the word being conscious of it. Does it clear things up? When we were talking about it, the person said, if you're referring to this unconditioned state, then don't use the word awareness. For me, awareness is subject and object. That's how we use it. I wasn't aware of this until I became aware of it. So, no matter what words one uses, in this state wherever one is there someone who wants something, needs to prove something, become something, get rid of something? We can ask that. No one has to do it, but we're doing it in talks to find out what that subject is. Can there be awareness of the wants, wanting to become, wanting to be, wanting to hear those crickets perfectly or non-dividedly, having that wholeness that one hears talk about? I probably have not represented the question properly. It's difficult for me. And I do not mean to misrepresent it either. But it is true, this state that we refer to as awareness, let's drop awareness altogether. There's no awareness, there's only what is. The senses are alive, alert, working together harmoniously. And the storyline is absent. The moment the storyline comes up, I'm hearing it well, or I'm not hearing it as well as probably she or he does, then we'll use a different word. Pick it. It doesn't matter. Am I confusing you? And if so, that's why we have possibility for daily meetings, so we can look into confusion. Of course, very often a confusion one may not be aware of it. One learns a new conditioned language. And this has been pointed out to us many times here, that we're having our party line, our own ingrained language, and defending it, or so forth. We're looking at that, and please challenge it if you feel that, so we can look at it again, and maybe find it's inevitable when people work together, or when one gives talks, one after another, that a certain language becomes the preferred one. But this is what we were talking this morning about too. Can one be flexible with the words and substitute one for another what is important is that one sees what one is talking about, that is clear. When that's clear, the words can be adjusted so that we understand each other. And I realize if one comes from a different tradition where the words may be differently used, then we need to settle words. But are we seeing the same thing? At the same place? At this moment? The same intensity? Then we can agree on the words, or put one aside and use another one. So if that feeling is there, that in awareness of there is someone there who is aware of an object, who is that someone? What is that? Because this feeling is questioned. The truth of a separate entity is under investigation. Is there a wanting? The hum of wanting. And what is it all about? Something imagined that one could have, could be, could become, and humming toward it. In this, what somebody called this dream we call our life. As to, is there a practice necessary, practice of concentration to remain attentive or aware, comes up a lot. And people often feel I'm maybe not quite responsible in discarding that or saying there is no effort. And then often bringing up, what about your own training? And I was just counting here a little while ago, started in 1967. I left the Zen Center when? In 1980. It was a lot of years. Shall I say something about those years? To have to? Is it interesting? Maybe to also look at it myself again. Starting out with being given a breath practice. But when I came to the Zen Center, saying this without any bragging, that the mind was able to concentrate quite well. I just recently studied with great interest many topics like psychology, math. We had to take Math 101, Science 101, which I always thought I was no good at, and here was an opportunity to do 101. It's marvelous. We started with 1 + 1 = 2. There was a lot of concentration because it went swiftly into more complex things. And by really concentrating, and maybe through concentrating, shedding this idea that I was no good at math, I was able to finish the course well and have joy and fun in it, in science as well. But I had to concentrate like the dickens on these things. Study and just go over and over. It didn't come easy to me. So by the time of arriving at the Zen Center, the mind had learned through interest in the academic subjects to concentrate. So that's why immediately I was taken off of the breath practice and onto what was called shikantaza, meaning let the mind just sit, be. And it may have been the very first sesshin, walking along East Avenue. There are beautiful trees there, or were, I don't know whether they're still all there. It was fall and sort of crunching through these fallen leaves, some of them dry, others beautiful, full of color, full of life. Suddenly, this whole Jewish problem that I had carried around, that I'd lived through, dropped off. It was resolved for me. It was finished. It has never come up again. Problem of this Jewish suffering, which I had felt was my heritage. And full of excitement, a little bit storyline added by the time I got to Doksan. I told my teacher about this, and he said, you better get on to Mu, and don't take walks. Yeah, this is how it was. I don't think I've told this to anybody. I had gone out for a walk, and it was not allowed. And I was told that. Stay in the compound and practice Mu. This was like being put into a prison. That's how it felt. Although the other part, and we think in fragments, was now I got this koan, I'd read how it has resonated through Zen halls for 2,000 years or so. It gives you some feeling of belonging and pride. But for this mind, it was a prison, which this mind did not like, so this mind got through Mu, by hook or crook. I didn't want to go with it. It was a bother. So after that, there were other koans, and admittedly, holding a koan in one's mind needs some concentration to look at it. They become more intricate, so to hold a longer koan in the mind needs more concentration, which wasn't too much of a problem, but maybe in that there was additional concentration practice. But to see the meaning of a koan, a mind must not be concentrated. It must be relaxed. In a state of no wanting or division. To just see what it is. And a lot of them I didn't see. I just sort of got through there. A lot of them are similar. Sometimes the teacher gives a cue. Sometimes he even demonstrates himself. You can get very clever in this. I'm not saying I was clever all the time, or everybody who does koan study is clever. But to really, much later, the koans became much more clear to me than at the time I was going through them. So was this practice useful for the mind to be relaxed and open? Undivided with what's there. I remember trying to get these intervals between having some answer to the koan and before the next one was assigned, which was the next doksan or whenever one was passed, trying to get some free intervals in which the mind could just sit without any nothing imposed on it, nothing to solve, nothing to do. Of course, beside koan study, there is in Zen a lot of talk about mindfulness and a lot of practice of mindfulness. You're exhorted to wash the dishes mindfully and eat and walk and so forth. But I also found that one can do that very mindfully and not be open to the one who is mindful, who's doing that, who wants something from it. That was never pointed out in that system. All this stuff came to me when I later read Krishnamurti ad infinitum, to clear the mind of and see into stuff. What was behind some of these things or underneath them. One can walk and act and wash and clean so mindfully and not mindful of the one who is doing it and who wants to get something out of it or be good or attain on this path to enlightenment or be seen by the teacher or the senior disciples. I'm not saying it's like that for all. Maybe not, but we can look. And it's amazing what one discovers when one looks without any idea of not being like that. So, I understand this yearning for having something to make us be more mindful, or as mindful as we were, or as attentive or aware as we were yesterday when everything was so clear, and in that clarity a lovingness or compassion arising for everything. One wants that again, and not just for me, but for everyone. And that is the urge or the yearning for a practice, for something to bring us closer to this or have it happen more frequently. So I've asked myself, what is it that brings awareness about? When one doesn't have a specific practice, which I have put aside very early in this life of training here. And it occurred that, first of all, really being interested in what is going on in oneself and in our relationship with each other. A serious concern with how we live, how we create pain and sorrow for ourselves and each other. And how does this happen? Can it be caught as it happens? Or while it happens, or after it has happened? Sooner the better. Is that possible? So this deep concern, which is the concern of one's life, not just one retreat, or a few, this year, next year, I'm off onto something else. This concern, which is one's life, seems to have something to do with being more aware of what is going on in oneself and each other. And also the pain itself of an anger arising, an annoyance, the fluttering of fear. The way anxiety socks one in the solar plexus or wherever. All the pleasurable feelings of anticipating something, this all upsets in some way the balance of the body that is at ease. Natural. All of a sudden, the fluttering of this anxiety or the pain or rush of annoyance. That itself is a waker-upper, or can be. What's going on? I don't need to practice, it's right there. The body manifests these states which are unpleasant or which are driving out of this a state of balance. Of course, you could say, well, I never experienced a state of balance. I'm not so sure. It's only that then the dream may be that much more intense. But if also a state of balance is there, awarely, we'll use the word carefully, then the moment anxiety hits or annoyance rushes around this body, this is the signal to look. What's happening? Or some depressive mood sets upon one. Whatever all of that is, and we talk about it a lot. Isn't that the signal to look? To be aware and attentive to what's there? Maybe as a subject who wants to get rid of this object named depression, but maybe just, what is it? I don't know. Let it reveal itself. Let it be there, not this habitual rushing against it or hemming it in, bracing against it, wanting to be done with it, ignoring it, denying it. All that can also come into awareness. If one thinks a lot about it, we can say it comes into consciousness. Can that be the alarm clock, the alarm bell? Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. One may be so used to it that one has learned to live with denial or repression. But that may have been up to this moment. The next time it happens, one may not be used to it. One may wonder what is going on. I just have learned to concentrate on my breathing or voice the moo. That's what people were trained in. The moment something happens, just moo. And then one learns to moo away the stuff, the anger, discontent, fear. That's what people told me when they were free to say something in Doksan, other than just yell moo. The practice lends itself very well to clean the state and create an artificial space of quiet. I'm not saying everybody is using it this way, but it's up to us to find out. There was a correspondence once in the newsletter about someone who had gone to therapy. And for the first time, a person was long trained in Zen, and we worked together. First time finding out that there was this attentive one who wanted approval through his attention, through his good practice and so forth. One mustn't assume this isn't so for oneself. One has to look. And can the looking be without? Just looking what's there. What the results will be, who knows? Listening. Recently, I used to use the word seeing more, now I use listening, but please, they can be interchanged, because in true seeing, the ears are wide open. And in true listening, the eyes are open. The senses are not something separate. It's the intellect that makes them separate. Because the ear is an ear and the eye is an eye. But a whole perception is the wholeness of perceiving, in which eyes, ears, a sense of touch, and so they're all working together harmoniously. So sometimes people tell me it's simpler for me to use listening, that word is simpler than seeing. Then do use whatever words are helpful. And bring it to me. Maybe we can change words. But what I found very fascinating when I studied Krishnamurti's teaching was that suddenly he would change words around. A word which he had used for this now was used for the word, particularly reality, used for the absolute, all of a sudden was for what thought creates. And you had no choice but to go with it if you wanted to read. Couldn't hassle with that man. I didn't know him personally, but it was fun to lose the tightness to the words and be flexible. And still be in touch with what he was saying, and realize how relative the words are. Not denying that words have an impact. I'm not making light of it. So, if something isn't clear in the words, the definition isn't clear, bring it up, we'll work through it, and the next talk may reflect it. These talks are not given to propound a dogma, but to convey what is felt very deeply and seen very clearly, at least at times. And the words that come are words that have been used before. They come easier, but it doesn't mean that we have to, they're not absolutely necessary. We can substitute. See, the whole thing of effort came up again. And one makes a tremendous effort not to go with what somebody called comfort or pleasure. That came up very early in this retreat, somebody saying, I find that I so much easier and more readily go with comfort and pleasure than to just stick it out looking at something or sitting with it. Is that the effort? Not to go with the comfort and pleasure and distraction, but to stay with what's there. All the momentum of the body, the addiction to pleasure and comfort, and the whole society going for comfort and pleasure. All that tremendous momentum. And then to say no to that and look at the depression or the discomfort, the depth of discontent. Is that the effort? We can still look at it further, put a huge magnifying glass on it. I don't have the answer yet. We're looking. I'm starting to look too. How does it happen? How does it happen that at a given moment one doesn't go with the comfort and pleasure and sticks with the anxiety, the pain of loneliness, depression? How does it happen? Very often it happens, doesn't it? I'm looking. That one has the idea, I should be sticking with this. I've heard talks about it, read books about it. And then there's the effort of what I should be doing, what I would rather be doing. The conflict of those. And whenever there's conflict, there's effort. The effort of choice, of decision-making, of resistance. Because if I say, I gotta stick here and stick it out, I will do that. I have to arouse the will to do that. Then with the will that is aroused, the resistance against it is also aroused. It's not a dogma. Look at it, find out. It's amazing how those two go hand in hand, will and resistance. Maybe that's why the effort has to be made, because the will arouses the resistance that one now has to plow through. Again, is it a matter of how choicelessly interested I am in this state which has haunted me or been with me, weighed me down all my life, and at this moment I say, what is it? And want to find out about it. See that one more postponement is going to go through another cycle which I've gone through 1,000,000 times. So it's not the effort of choice, but just, what is it? And that doesn't mean there isn't energy applied to this. We talked about that yesterday. Somebody making that differentiation between awareness, the open thing, and attention given is energy now brought to bear on what is this depression. And that can be called concentration. I don't call it concentration. You know why not? Why don't I call it concentration? Because I hate that word? No, it's not that. It's because the airplane is also there, isn't it? I try to concentrate on what I'm going to say, then I have to shut out that plane because it's distracting me. That's what concentration usually means. Concentrating means cutting out fighting or distractions. Now, I may be wrong, maybe off. It's for all of us to look at. So, for energy to go into this, what is this, into this question, Doesn't mean the mind closes down and fights distractions. Doesn't even call anything a distraction. Going for comfort and pleasure is going for comfort and pleasure and not being with depression. I won't find out anything about depression if I go for a comfort or pleasure. Do I have to say I'm not condemning comfort or pleasure? I'm not. We go for it most of the time. We're able to in this country, at least in this strata of society. The people for whom it is not a temptation because there is no comfort or pleasure in their life. But needing, actually, really opening up to this fear or depression, a usual comfort or pleasure may just not be so alluring anymore. It may appear faded as compared to figuring this thing out. By figuring, I don't mean intellectually, but finding out what it is, being with it, allowing it to reveal itself, unfold, do its thing in the presence of looking and listening. Not out for a result, but with it. If I'm making an effort, then it's another sign. Am I resisting something, willing something, want a result? Then it's like a blinker light again. I can look at that. And with wanting a result, willing it, or resisting it, with that, there is a separation from what I have called the depression, or the fear, the loneliness. And then I may even find out that calling it fear or depression or loneliness is already a separation, because truly I don't know what this is. All what I know is what I've remembered from the past, which is the dream of my whole life. What is this right now? I don't know. Something is there. What is it? I don't know. Either I need to find out or I don't. If I don't, I don't. If I do, will I find out? I don't know. But I'm interested. I'm with it. I know the words are dualistic. There's no I. It's the way we talk. Sometimes people have gotten annoyed when I have not used the word I or one. I say, this is annoying, always hearing you say one or I, or omitting the word I. Be natural. Talk naturally. But there's no such thing as natural talking. It's a language which is artificial. And if the language grows out of this deep-seated experience, there being a separate I, then it has that in it. So when I say I want to find out, or maybe this is how we start, with this deep-seated feeling. Not just maybe, we do. Deep-seated feeling that there's a separate entity that has a depression. So let's find out about the depression, but also about this idea that there's one who has it, because that may be linked with the depression. Without that deep-seated feeling that I'm a separate entity, there may be no depression. No one to get depressed. Just the ups and downs, or the coming in and out of the ebb and tide. It's not happening to anyone, it's just happening. What is happening? Can there be listening, looking, feeling, without knowing it, without labeling it, reacting against it? And the question maybe we'll go more into tomorrow, but in what someone in a group said was dying to this whole dream of one's life, does this dying imply that I have to let go of what I love, what I'm attached to? Do I have to give it up? Where's the question coming from? Who's asking it? This is not a practice of shoulds and oughts and do and don't, of commands, give up, renounce, let go. Who is to let go? Who is to give up? I don't talk like that, but it's often projected onto me because we're questioning things and the brain says, oh my God, I should give this up. I have to give it up because it's bad. It's clear from the way she talks, it's bad. It may be a hindrance, a prison, but that's not a judgment, it's a fact. If one sees it, if one clearly sees it and just doesn't take over from someone else, because then it becomes a judgment. So all we're trying to say, and I'm not sure I'm always putting it clearly, I may confuse people with the way I put things, but all I'm talking about is looking at what's there, listening to it, carefully, openly, not knowing the outcome. The person said, I really don't know what to do about all this. Is that really so? They really don't know what to do? Can one stick with that, not knowing what to do, and see how the mind and body really want to do this? Maybe make it into a practice, not knowing what to do. Or is it a fact that one doesn't know what to do and seeing whatever one does is more of the same, wanting, getting results, running away, following rules or ideas or shoulds and oughts. We've done it so many times, over and over, and still doing it. What we haven't done is just to look at something or listen carefully to what all is there without knowing where it will lead, who is doing it, why, wherefore. It's just there. Is looking and listening a doing? Can that become now what I've got to do? I've got to listen and look? It does, doesn't it? Or is the sound of the crickets is there, whether I do something or not? Maybe if I do something, it's not there. Can we hear? Be open, not knowing. What is there when I don't know? Don't know what to do. we will end here for today.